Oh, I might. Hey, I will do three things. I'll try to do three things today. Number one, I will briefly mention about the general guideline about the midterm on Friday. The second thing is I will try to finish the last part about dump to JSON, which conclude everything I would like to convey to you for homework 2. And then I'm going to start moving to, if you look at the reference book I gave you, it's chapter 13 and chapter 14. It's about inheritance and polymorphism. This is probably the most complicated but really useful concept in object-oriented programming. And we will spend a lot of time over there, probably almost finish at the end of the quarter, okay? Because there are so many issues that we need to touch on. All right, so first let's talk about the midterm. On Friday, I already have the midterm ready, so I can tell you the format. It has 3 questions. One question is directly related to the design of a scenario that's similar to your homework assignment number 2. And the second question, I forgot second or third, one of the question is directly related to object reference.cpp, which is I talk about the difference between call by value, call by reference, and call by pointer, right? So that's the second question. And the third question is going to be operator overloading. So I forgot which program I mentioned, but one of the example, it shows you how to do operator overloading. All right. So those are the 3 questions. And the second thing I do want to mention is that for the first 2 exams, I try to emphasize more on the concept I want you to learn. And therefore, the concept itself should be the basic concept in terms of C++ programming. And then I will use some of the simpler example to ask you to probe you, see whether you can do that. Okay, so that's what you will be expecting this Friday. I do want to say a little bit about the first question. The first question has 2 parts. So essentially, what I will be asking you is I gave you 2 different designs. So as you can imagine, for homework 2, it's not really, you don't have a definite answer about this is the only way to go. In fact, the power of object-oriented programming is giving you so many different options that you can choose from to decide which one will fit better to your application. So for that first question, I will give you 2 different application scenario. I call it scenario 1 and scenario 2. And I give you 2 options about the design choices, about some of the concepts related to your homework assignment number 2. And I want you to tell me in the answer that for this particular scenario, which of the design choice is preferable to you. And then you provide a reason why you think that under this scenario, you should use this design. Under this scenario, you should use whatever, but I do want you to justify your choice, okay? So that's kind of you will be expecting. Okay, so that's all the information I'd like to convey to you regarding the exam on Friday. Any question? Yes.
I'm still a little bit unclear about the exact part of the operation over here. It just, I'm like still, I don't understand what exactly.
Okay, so so obviously operator overloading, there are multiple parts of knowledge, as you know. The first thing is that what is operator overloading, right? What is operator overloading, and syntactically how is being that's one thing. But also there is a more complicated one, which is okay, because you can overload different type of operator. And then for different type, you might have a different way to set up argument, a different way to set up the return type, which will need to fit into the I call a test program, because the test program is going to really using the operator overloading you set up. So operator overloading, let me just say that is sometimes I would say it's a disguise from the test program, because you thought this is operator equal, it should have its semantics, but it has been overloaded to something else. So it's a disguise, or maybe you say improved readability. That's the reason. So a lot of this, you have to see what is the type. And yet the third part of operator overloading is even more complicated. It has to do with whatever is reference. The variable type is the reference, or is a value, and that creates yet another level of complexity. So for the second midterm, I'm expecting only the first kind and the second kind to combine together, and I will ask you the simplest one. For example, I won't ask you how to operator overloading bracket, which is the JSON value they actually use. I won't use that. In fact, later we will revisit the operator overloading with a more complicated type, such that when we do it's here. When we do this, right? This line over here, just that line, it has two operator overloading. You look at the JSON value, it has two operator overloading. The first operator loading is overload the bracket, which I already talked about on Monday. But the second operator they overload is the equal, is assignment. So the operator overloading is really useful. Well, I shouldn't say it's really useful. I feel that it's disguised. I mean, if you learn how to use JSON, you don't need to worry about this side. You just use it, right? It looks like, oh, it's fine. This is the way to use it. But I just want to tell you that for this simple example, it has two operators being overloaded. So you can see that when you read a program with a really experienced programmer, they use a lot of this operator overloading. They overload a lot of things such that the program looks, I don't know. Okay, but for this exam, you don't worry about that. But I would like to go back, because I'm expecting you at the end of the quarter, you will become at least an intermediate programmer in object-oriented programming language, or even some of you become really experienced. Therefore, it's always good learning for you to see that a more advanced usage of this kind of concept. Okay. Any other question? Okay, so now I'm going to try to finish this example, and that will be the part you probably already know is this part. I kind of go over where and when, and see that what is the JSON is being produced. So now I'm going to follow a slightly more advanced part of this dump to JSON is when we how do we deal with a vector? Okay, so just to go here. So if you remember the record.h that we declare 4 major attributes, and 2 of them are just basic type, is the where and when. Where and when is just a single object. But the things and person, they're both vector, has been extended. So you can see that over here, we have a what person, it's a vector. And then we have another called what things, which is a vector too, meaning that we want to represent multiple of this kind of persons and things they can be involved. Okay. By the way, this example will be continue to homework assignment number 3 when we go to the inheritance. Also, you will see that why this simple representation record can have a really cool application that to deal with some advanced innovation for information technology. So now I just want to say, what happened if I have a vector of object? How do I implement dump to JSON? How do I translate that? So vector is an array, and JSON does support array. So essentially what we want to do is we kind of connect the array representation of object in C++, which we call a vector at this moment, and then connect to the JSON array. How do we bring the bridges so we can represent all the information over here? So just to let you know, I think not in the immediate homework, but the next homework, you actually will do the reverse direction. So meaning that here I'm giving you a C++ object, you try to generate a JSON called dump to JSON. But the other way you can imagine is that, okay, I give you a JSON, and then you convert it back to the C++. If you have a both way, then you can imagine that you can essentially don't worry about what programming language you're using, because you can always convert back and forth. You have an intermediate format called a JSON for you to play with. Okay, so now let's look at this. I first will show you the code and try to guess what this code is doing. Okay, so I just give you 4 lines of code. This 5 lines of code, actually. This 5 lines of code will convert the C++ vector into JSON array. Okay, don't worry about operator overloading at this moment. You know it's difficult. This way, sorry, there are 3 operator overloading. Okay, previous one has 2, but this one has 3. This is overloading a bracket, overloading an index, and overloading the assignment. Okay, so don't worry about that, but just try to guess what is the code is doing. Yes.
It's dumping the elements at a specific index into the JSON.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's correct. Thank you for the summarization. So essentially, we try to say the first element in the vector. So first, let's look at the vector part about this representation. I have a loop, right? This is the loop. This is just an instruction point for you to learn how to use vector. The vector, if you remember, has a one-member function called size. This size will give you the number of elements in the array. By the way, this is an improvement from C array. In C array, we have no way. The compiler has no way to determine how many elements that you have in the array. That is one big problem in C only programming, and sometimes you have to, it's a programmer's job to figure out how many elements, and I need to track in order for me to have the right logic to process array. But in C++, the vector has this capability called size. It becomes the standard template library's job to help programmer to track how many elements. Okay, so that is, if you're a C programmer, just be aware that you should starting using vector instead of using array, because of it is much easier to use. Okay, all right. So this line is basically iterate through every single element from what? From the C array. From the C array. And now what's the C array? Is over here. C array is this to the who person, right? This to the who person. What's this to the who person? Is a vector of person object, right? This is who the person over here. You see that? It's a vector of person object. So over here, this part of the syntax is exactly the same as array. So I have a vector, I just put the index I. Where do I get the I? I get it from the loop, right? So essentially, don't look at this part yet. But whatever I have over here is exactly the way I'm using the traditional C type of array, right? To access to that. So from that perspective, C array and vector, they're basically equivalent. Okay, so now we have to answer a question. Can somebody tell me what should be the data type of this portion of the sentence? Okay, I realize to write a C or C++ program is always a good habit, and try to take a look at a segment of the code and decide what exactly is the data type of that particular thing. Okay, so can someone tell me what should be the data type of this particular part of code I just highlighted? Yes. You said what? String? Okay. No, that's not right. That's not true. What other things? But good guess. I appreciate your effort. Thank you. What? Yes, it's a person, right? So you see that the answer why is not why is not a string, because you have to compare this line. This line. This line defines what is who person, right? Who person is what? I use the word array of person or vector person. I use the word array and vector interchangeably. Okay, sorry about that. But essentially, this is an array of person object. So therefore, if it's an array of person object, when I refer to one particular element of this array using index, it became a person object, right? So you have an array of person object. Now is the first, second, or third one, whatever. Yes.
That's where results being declared.
What is the result?
You said result.
Okay, sure. Result here. Result is JSON value. Okay, so over here, just follow up your question. Whatever on the left side of the assignment, which is equal sign, is the JSON part of the work. On the right-hand side is a C++ work. So dump to JSON is done from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. If you see what's happening over here, you see that? This is equal sign assignment over here. And on this side is a C++ world. On this side is the JSON world. Yeah.
So same time, like you scroll down. At the same time that you're declaring that key group, are you also essentially creating that key in the JSON?
That's correct. That's correct.
And does it automatically understand that it's going to be an array, the I index?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's both being overloaded.
Okay.
That's both being overloaded, so it will handle. Yeah. So in fact, the way it does is that it first will just let you know the first part to process is this part. So it has a key called who, right? So who is being overloaded, and then it will say whenever you see this one, it's an array. It's a JSON array. So that's why it's a 2 overloading, and then they will assign this part, whatever, to that value. And then, of course, you overload the assignment as well. Okay, that's why overloading sometimes is really, really interesting, powerful, but complicated to understand. Yes?
How's the key used? How's the
Okay, the key who is chosen by the programmer in this case, so it's manually decided. So whoever decides to implement this down to JSON, they have to have one way to basically choose the key to represent. In this case, I might, for me as a programmer, I might choose the key who person or who. That's my choice. Okay, so I did mention in one lecture or 2 lectures, I said in the future, I might be able to write another compiler to automatically generate this code. I might be able to automatically generate this code such that I pick up the string foo directly from the attribute defined in the C++. I might be able to do that as well. So instead of manually say foo, if I'm going to write automatic generation, I'm going to be foo person as the key, because I want to match with the C++ implementation. So in this, I'm not that precise, so it's just manually do that. It just clarifies. Okay, any other question? All right, so now we clarify that this part, let me copy this. I want to say this. So this part, the data type is person. Okay, it's a person, class person. Okay, I just want to clarify that. So now if it's a person, then remember we talk about the concept of recursion, right? I want to convert every single C++ object to a JSON representation, just like the last time we convert a GPS location as well as a timestamp into a JSON representation. So here I'm actually going to convert a person. So this part is exactly, if you take a look at let me see, what should I do to tell you this? No, there's not easy way to do that. So let me just do this way. So if I do person dot h, not too surprised that under person, I have a function called dump to JSON. And this dump to JSON basically represent all the element that's related to a person that will be dumped. If you can see the implementation under person.cpp. So since we remember, one of the things in the design of dump to JSON is number one is recursion. Number two, we assume every single class will have dump to JSON. So in this case, what should we do? We just basically call this function dump to JSON. And look at the prototype, the function prototype on the person.h. What's the return value, return data type of dump to JSON? Is always JSON value. So JSON value is the JSON object. So essentially the return type, so this is the person. So I have this function I can call, and the whole thing, the data type of the whole thing, let me actually just copy it. The data type now with the whole thing up to this point. The whole thing, the data type is what? Is a class JSON value. Okay, is JSON value. All right, so this is basically how we take care of these things. And finally, what's the other side? The other side is essentially the result who. This represents the key value pair, but the who is actually going to address to an array because you have another index. So whenever in JSON, whatever a JSON value you have, by the way, what is the result who? This is going to be JSON value. If you remember this one, I just want to show you very quickly. Sorry about that. If you look at next value h, I want to say operator. You see that? Not this one. Over here, we have operator. I don't want to do that. Okay, fine. The operator overloading with the string over here, there are 4 of this function, but for each of the function, the return type is a value object. Right now, just assume value object reference and value object, they were the same thing. Okay, don't worry about that difference at this moment. But essentially, the return of that is always JSON value. So if it is JSON value, then let's get back to here. So what I'm saying is, then this part is going to give you a JSON value. And then with I, it's a JSON value with I, that means is a JSON value that is going to be a data type JSON value. Right. Yes. Okay. This one I show up here is the source code for the JSON CPP. So basically is the library that we're using to process the JSON information. So what? Well, in C++ we call it two, not equal. Yeah. It is because they want to represent different information. But for example, they're allow you to use both the C string and the C++ string. So over here you see that for this, you just take a look at this. These two are both using the traditional C. Oh, sorry. These two are traditional C string. The only difference is that the second one has a const. So meaning that const means that whatever I return, you cannot modify. Okay, that's why it's const. So meaning that, for example, if you use that one, you cannot use it for assignment. On the left-hand side of the assignment, you want to assign, it will say no. This particular return value is const. You cannot change the value. So what we're using, it must be the first one, which is a value reference, and you can modify. Okay, that's the difference between this one and this one. And then the second one you can see here, operator, is a string. This string is C++ string. By the way, that's another, just like a C array versus vector, C string is also different from the C++ string. So if you see the capital string, that's C++ string. Okay, it's also more powerful. It also did a few other checks, like the C string. It so easily cause segmentation fault. C++ string has some of the problem taken care. Okay. Okay. Any other question? Okay, so just let you know, this one is a source code. When some of you install JSON CPP, regardless if you use Homebrew or you're using apt-get, and essentially what you install is the source code, the library of compile from the source code. And I feel it's really, really good for a programmer to learn about this detail, because not only you kind of have a deeper understanding about the programming language we're using, but also you learn really, really professional C++ programmer, how they use this feature, such as operator overloading or inheritance or object reference and object pointer in their code. And sometimes you will see, oh, I learned a lot. And sometimes you will see their mistake as well. And they commit some of the practice, which might not be terribly good. So it's always good for you to have the capability to read somebody else's code. Okay, that's why I said, I want you to have the capability to guess. When you look at the piece of code, try to guess what that code is. And then through that process, you will learn a lot, okay? Okay, let's move back here. This one, okay. All right, so this part is basically, I have the, okay, let me do this. This part, I'm only using value, okay? JSON object. So this one is what? Is a class JSON value. And however, that JSON value has 4 or 5 different types, and this is array type. Okay, because you have an index over here after this bracket I here. Okay, And therefore, now we can see this. Now this part, result I, is also a class JSON value. But this become a object or whatever type is being assigned. Whatever assigned. Okay, so just like this and the without the index is a vector. After the I is actually go to the element in the array. Similar here, this is going to be equivalent of the vector in C++, and this is basically one particular element in that array. Okay. And then that's why the whole thing, you can see that now I get down to this level, I basically has this. What is this? It's actually going to be JSON value. If you look at the code, I show you, it's actually a JSON value reference instead of JSON value value. So, but don't worry about that. At this moment, I'm not going to go into that detail, but later I will actually dive into that to tell you exactly why you have to use reference at that point. Okay, but right now, don't worry about that. As long as you know it's a class JSON value, that's good enough for now. Okay, so if this is a JSON value, and what's here? This one is also a JSON value, right? Dump to JSON is actually going to return a JSON value. So perfect, you have a one side of the JSON value, and then you have another side which is also a JSON value, and in the middle, what connects you is a equal sign. Okay, so if you think about that in C programming, I want you to be sensitive to that once you understand the idea of operator overloading. When I assign a number, a variable, of integer on the left, and a variable on the right, then it's pretty obvious I'm assigning a value of, say, 27 into that integer value. But what does that mean when I actually assign a JSON value or JSON object into another JSON object? What does that mean? So, not too surprised, that's also being overloaded. Okay, so let me do this. Operator equal, not this one. Yes, this is the JSON value operator equal. You see that? I basically have an operator equal. What's the parameter type? Parameter type is a value n. What's that? It's a reference. This side constant value n represent the left-hand side. Where's my code? Over here. Yeah. It represents the left-hand side. So a JSON value is actually going to the parameter, and then that value is going to be assigned into this based on the implementation of the operator overloading I just showed you. Okay, so it's a little bit complicated, but that's the big difference between the traditional C programming and C++ programming, that I can enable myself to kind of disguise about the assignment operator and be able to handle a complicated information such as JSON. Okay. But as a programmer, by the way, the first thing I want you to learn, I don't want you to learn something more complicated than, oh, I see that if I see a line looks like this, I can assign into that. That means, okay, I know the semantic usage of this kind of notation in the array or in whatever, and without need to really understand the detail about the implementation at the classes I will be using. So one way to learn about this is really try to look at this. Oh, you know what? I'm going to do this. I will just recompile. And then I will run the code. Okay, so now you see that what we went through is who, right? That's who. That's what is an JSON array. I just show you. And you see that is array they put into this bracket interface. And from this to this element, this is essentially array 0, index 0 over there. And the second part is essentially the second array element, which is the index 1. So index 0, index 1. So can someone tell me what does this part of information I just highlight, which program produce the whole thing? Which program produced the whole thing? Yes. Dump to JSON. Okay, good. But remember, dump to JSON, we have dump to JSON on every single class, right? So which class is dump to JSON that this one is producing this particular one? Yeah.
JSON relevant?
No, it's a person. What I'm saying is, this is sorry. Maybe it's my fault. I didn't ask the question clearly, but let me tell you what I'm really asking is that so if you look at GPS.h, I would say GPS.cpp is easier. You see that under GPS.cpp, I do have a function called dump to JSON. It does return JSON value. And the thing is that when I implement, I actually say GPS.dd : dump to JSON, meaning that this particular dump JSON is for the class GPS.dd. If you look at thing.cpp, the same thing, you have, wait a minute, I skip it already. You see that I also have dump to JSON. It's also returning a value, JSON value, but the class is thing : That means that dump to JSON belongs to the class thing. So, and yet another one is what we just saw is person.cpp. And inside the person.cpp, I also have the same thing, but here is a person. So my question to you was that this portion is generated by which version of the dump to JSON? Is it from GPS or is it from thing? Is it from person? The answer is person, right? Because it's what? It's a person array. So this is exactly matching our understanding of the C++ side. Okay, this is person side about this. And then you can see that within the person, you actually also need to call this section, which is the home. Which is the home. This part is generated by GPS. So essentially, we're saying that we call the highest level is calling the dump to JSON at the record, the class record. And the class record is going to call the class persons dump to JSON. And class person dump to JSON is going to call class GPS.dd under class, yeah. GPS.dd : JSON. So you can see that it's a same function I'm calling, but belong to different class. And when they work together, they will be able to produce the full object dump in this way, in the JSON format. Okay, so that's the one important paradigm I want you to learn how you can, in object-oriented language, when you have lots of class, but you will be able to capture the information very nicely and systematically. Yeah, you have a question there? No, don't worry. Okay, any question? Yeah, please.
Operator?
No, it's not. Typecasting is that I changed the type for one object to one data type to the other type. It might or might not involve some of the adjustment of the value, but it has nothing to do with the operator. So operator, if you think about, okay, I want to actually go back to this question. Let me use one example. I don't have too much time to go over inheritance. I will start inheritance next week anyway. So let me show you an operator overloading example. It should be in test person.cpp. Do I have operator overloading somewhere here? No, I don't have it here. I want to go to CPP01. Here I have the example of operator overloading. Okay, I will use this as an example. Okay, I will use this as an example. Here I have an example like two objects. They're both person, whether these two persons are the same. And why this is operator overloading? Because if you look at person.cpp, you see that in the CPP, I declare that two persons, if they're the same person, if their social security are the same, even you change the name. So I declare the equal operator. So this equal operator is essentially equivalent over here. So the thing is that if you have the operator being defined, this is called operator overloading, you declare this way, then essentially what we're doing is this. Let me tell you that. This is the way I like to represent. So essentially I'm doing is if person one dot operator equal person two. Okay, look at this two representation. The first representation is the correct syntax about the original language, right? I'm comparing person one with person two. But essentially what I'm doing is that I'm using person one as a base to call a member function, which is actually declared out there, person operator equal. I'm really calling the function and taking person two as what? As the argument, which is the another person. Okay, so this one, by the way, if you write it this way, it won't compile. It won't compile. This is syntax error. You can try. At least I tried last time, it didn't work. So, but technically, this will be translated internally into this, so we can call that particular function. Okay, does that make sense? I feel this is kind of help us to understand the operator overloading, because every time I see this, I actually want to know exactly which operator you actually implement. And unfortunately, the compiler usually don't tell you. You have to figure out yourself. Yeah. Okay. All right. See you on Friday.